G'day. I've actually remembered to hit record today. How good is that? Last week I had to record afterwards, which was a bit, bit silly. But today we're sorted. So we're talking about how to call out inequality. I want to say a quick shout out. There's a bumper room here with us today. Christine, Brielle, Tarsila, Deborah, Millie, Carol, Lisa, Natasha, Layla. I think we have, it's about 90% women in the group today. That's really interesting. So I am Kath Nolan. I'm Catherine Nolan. I am sitting here on Gadigal land today, where I live and work and play, as generations of my ancestors have done, and many generations of Indigenous Australians before that. G'day, Katrina. Welcome. So I guess to just introduce really briefly myself, we're here for about 20 minutes today. And so I'm going to be very brief with the introductions. I'm simply going to say I'm known as the friendly, I'm known as the optimistic feminist. I'm an award-winning leadership coach and a professional motivator through workshops and books and, speaking gigs and that sort of stuff. So please feel free if anyone has any questions. We are recording, so I've had a few messages from people saying they couldn't attend last minute. That's all good. So there'll be several people who are watching, I know, from the replay. So we'll capture the questions, and then I will get to those at the end as well. So let me just make sure my chat box is down though. Beautiful. Okay, so we're talking about calling out inequality. There seems like there's been a spate lately, especially of racist, sexist, ableist comments that are in the media and also popping up in conversations I'm having with leaders about what's happening in their workplaces, among colleagues, and in their personal lives as well. So I'm going to share with you a bit of a framework, and I'm going to share with you how this fits into what else you do as a leader. And I'm going to share with you some examples of where it's been called out and how that went. Because ultimately, the main point for today is that you come away from today knowing how you will speak up and what you will say. Because if you've practiced it, then you're more likely to be comfortable bringing it out in that moment and not sort of leaving the moment and saying, I wish I'd said that. I should have said that. Okay, so let me click over. So 30, what's this 30 about? This 30 is the leaders who I work with, the successful leaders who I work with, who operate in that space of, there are people all of us are working really hard, right? But there are people who seem to be more successful but work less hard. It seems to take less of a strain. It drains them less than the people who look as though they're working at 150% capacity. They're working really hard. They're completely stressed out. They've got no time for their personal lives. And they're not quite making traction in the same way. So the people who I work with who are the most successful in this sort of 30%, this top 30% space, it's not about working at like 180% of capacity. It's working at like 80% of your capacity, but getting 150% of the result. And so this means, what does it look like? It means that you're present for your downtime. It means that you are impactful in your work time and well rewarded for that. So there are five key shifts that the clients I work with, 5 key shifts that allow them to operate in that top 30%. And this tool we're talking about today, calling out inequality, this inclusive leadership piece, calling it out is a small part of how to be an inclusive leader. And this tool we're talking about today relates to 3 of those shifts. So 3 of these fundamental shifts. I'm going to walk you through what those 5 are. But again, the focus today is on this particular tool, calling out inequality. So I'm not going to dwell too long on the 5 shifts. I want to walk you through so you've got the framework. Okay, the first one, the first shift of those people who operate in that top 30% of productivity is to choose just one thing. It's one area of focus, one area of focus. That doesn't mean that everything else gets lost and forgotten or abandoned, or, hard work is let go of. That's not what it means, but it definitely means that you need to focus on one thing. You cannot multitask on key important goals. If you do, it does take that so much longer to get where you want to go. Okay, choosing one thing, but you can't choose one thing unless you've made space for that one thing. So for instance, we can't have that one thing be your key focus if it's on top of all of the other things that you do at the same mad pace you're currently working at. You need to make space for it. Now, this making space for it is actually a pretty quick, simple process within a few days. So within a few days, you'll see a rapid result with making space for that one important thing that you're chasing down. Okay. And I say this from a place of experience and knowing. I wrote 4 or 5 number one best-selling books in a space of about 12, 13 months, all in relation to the work that I do. That did not mean that my personal life was put on hold. It didn't mean any of those other things were dropped. So it is definitely possible, and I've seen it with my clients. So the third thing you need to do is the mindset. So don't be asked means don't be at risk of self-doubt. Don't risk self-doubt. It's the mindset piece. And this mindset piece, today's conversation about calling out inequality sits so much in mindset, so much in mindset. These things need to be on your radar, but you need to feel as though you've got capacity to take action on things that make you feel uncomfortable. So today we're hopefully shifting the dial in terms of your comfort level around this is not something that should make you uncomfortable. Calling out inequality is certainly something that is, when you know how to do it, when you know how you're going to do it, it's not something that will fit in the uncomfortable place anymore. It's certainly something that will be a proactive privilege, albeit one that you really, as an inclusive leader, you will, I'm sure, be choosing to embrace. Okay, so let me see. Okay, just checking the questions. Beautiful. So Alicia, we will cover that in just a second. Thank you. So the fourth thing to get you to that top 30% is the toolkit. You need some tools. It's not just it's not all, make the space. So it's not like build it and they'll come. It's not like that. You need the tools. And what we're talking about today sits well and truly within the toolkit for inclusive leaders. It's things like emotional intelligence, communication, and adaptive leadership. And the piece that we're talking about today, really it fits into all three of these, doesn't it? So when we're calling out inequality, it's one of those tough conversations that many people avoid, although they don't want to avoid, they avoid and have regrets afterwards. And by avoiding and having the regrets afterwards, the situation that you walk past is the one that you are embracing. And so it might be forgotten for you in moments. It might be 24 hours before you forget that revolting feeling of having not spoken up. But for those who are around you, whether there's someone who was specifically impacted by, whether they were, for example, a person who has a similar race to the racism that was called out in that inappropriate behavior, or whether they are somebody who has a different identifier that makes them feel a minority. If you stay silent when bad behavior is spoken or displayed, if you stay silent, then you are sending the message by your silence that inequality is accepted here, that there is a more powerful norm than that person. So it's absolutely critical that you do work out how to have these difficult conversations. Let's dive into it. Okay, so what does What does it look like? What does writing inequality look like? So we've talked about calling out inequality, but what does it look like? Moving my chat screen around so that I can see what we're doing here. What does it look like? There are several things that it can look like. I guess one of the most overt is advocacy at a political or an organizational level. This is the person who is willing to put that particular advocacy in their LinkedIn statement, or run a day like White Ribbon Day. I think is what day are we up to today? Today, 24th, today. So this might be the advocate for the end of violence against women, who is very overtly a practitioner of this kind of advocacy and support. It might be that you run an employee resource group, an ERG, or maybe you will simply show your support to an ERG. Supporting the end of inequality, it might look like, supporting groups you have connection to and supporting groups you have no connection to. So what I mean by that is that most people tend to be supportive of issues relating to sexism because they tend to either be a woman or they have a female as a mother or a child or a sister or a partner or a friend or a colleague. So most people tend to associate or feel a connection to inequality when it's related to women because they either are one or no one and well. But what about the groups you have no connection to? What about those groups? What are those groups? So what are those, the people, think about the employee resource groups within your organization, or think about, you could scroll through the news, you could scroll through any number of sources to find groups that you hear of advocating for change, but that you don't have a connection to, you don't associate with. So diversify your inputs. Diversify your inputs. How do you currently diversify your inputs? In a work sense, that might be around, making sure that you have a balanced team. Some environments, so some work environments look for a mix, for example, of at least 30% of a particular gender. In others, it's no more than 2 of any one particular thing. So that might be no more than 2 of people who are under the age of 25 or people who are over the age of whatever the age group is. So making sure that you have a diverse mix of people, not just a mix of gender or cultural backgrounds, or I think I've said in a cheeky post on LinkedIn this week that diversity is not just about, it's not just about gender or culture. It's it's not just about whether you are pro mullets in the workplace or not. It's not about whether you have children or non-children. It's about all of these things and so much more. It's about diversity of personality styles and thinking styles. There is a lot to diversity, and there's as many ways there are to be diverse, there are that many ways to be for people to be treated poorly based on those differences. So diversifying your inputs will mean that you are more open-minded and more, you will see more of, let me check the time, you're more likely to see the things that don't impact you directly. This is so critical because so many of us will only call out equality when it does affect you. So for instance, we're way more likely to call out inequality for a friend. We're certainly likely to tell the friend that you're really sorry that they experienced this. But how likely are you to speak up in the moment on that friend's behalf, on that colleague's behalf, on that stranger's behalf, and say, this isn't right. What you just said is not right. So there are a number of other ways on here. Listen outside of your experience. Teach others to be open. So if you have kids, fantastic. Teaching them to be open is a great way for you to expand your own capacity for diversity and inclusion. Some other ways do you call out casual inequality? Or do you just call out the major overt stuff? Different ways for writing inequality. So let me click on this little forward button look like. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples. What could speaking up sound like? And then we'll talk about some things to avoid. So the first one there is kind of just, I think what you just said was quite racist. I was having lunch in an Indian restaurant with a colleague a few years back, and I said to my colleague, I think I recognize the lady who's walking around serving, the waitress. I'm sure I recognize her. I'm sure that's Yvette. And the girl who I was sitting with said, I wouldn't know. I don't know how you know. They all look the same to me. And I was appalled. And I said to her, wait, that's really racist. Don't you look at people more closely and, understand what, anyway, went into this conversation saying, I found that really racist. Anyway, and then Yvette came over to our table and I said, Yvette, we worked together. It's so nice to see you again. And she said, oh, did we? She said, it's really hard for me to tell. She said, I find that all Australians look alike, all white Australians look alike. Anyway, so that was a very interesting conversation. But the point of raising this one is simply that there are times that you simply say, what you just said was inappropriate. There is no one thing to say. There is no one line that you can pull out that will work all of the time, because you are as individual as the next person. And if I give you a statement to use that doesn't suit your personality or doesn't suit this situation that you're in, the environment that you're in, then you're not going to use it. It has to be a statement that fits your personality, your style. Oh, how are we over time? Okay, good. This next one, when it's a sensitive situation. So sometimes when it's a colleague and you have a good working relationship, it's sometimes easier to call it out and say, hey, I don't like what you just said. But when there's some sensitivity, it's different. I was having a conversation with a person, and this one was a different one, sensitive for a different reason. I was at a large gathering over the weekend, and there was a person there who, so my parents were involved in organising this event. It was an event with people who are some pillars of society in their own way. And so I was sitting at this lunch, and the person across from me said, there's been so much change in our area lately. It's really gone downhill. He said there's a whole lot of new people coming into the area, and he said he specifically called out a particular cultural group and said, but, thank God, it's only the Christian kind of moving in, not the Muslims. He was talking about, he was saying that there was a lot of Arab people who moved into the area. And instantly I had that brain fog of, the Bambi in the headlights moment. Did you really just say that? And I had this moment of kind of assessing, this moment of silence where I was sort of assessing, hang on, where am I? What exactly am I allowed to say in this environment that will stop this conversation and make my feelings known without embarrassing the people who are part of the group? And so, as in the people who are organising the event, including mum and dad, because, you don't want to upset mum and dad, knowing full well mum and dad are totally on board. So after a couple of minutes, he asked me another question, and I said, actually, I'm sorry, I can't, I actually can't think of an answer to what you said. I'm still gobsmacked by what you said a few moments ago. What you said was, I found it really unsettling, incredibly unsettling. You implied that the area was coming down because of a certain cultural mix coming to the area. And then I happened to call out that there were some people who were very close to me who were also of an Arabic background, who are Muslim, and that they were some of the best people who I know, the absolute best people who I know. And this man was speaking to me knowing that he was a good Catholic man who was, this group was unrelated to a Catholic gathering, but he happened to know that my mum went to church, know that I go to the church, and he absolutely made assumptions that I was what he thought was just like him. His assumption of what I thought was just like him, I am nothing like him. And so we then had a conversation about what exactly it meant by him saying what the impression was that he created in what he said and how inappropriate it was. And then had a conversation with people who organized the group as well, and they were quite appalled also that the conversation happened. Regardless. So in that situation, the way that I called out in that time was to say, I'm very unsettled by what you just said. It was really inappropriate. And I don't believe that there is any kind of sense in what you just implied. The last one here, my friend Anna is a senior civil servant. So Anna called out Anna called out gender-oriented I've got messages popping in. You too, Diane. Thanks, honey. So Anna was in a situation where there were sexist remarks quite a lot, and not just remarks, but there were limits put on her career progression based on her gender. So she's in a very male-dominated work environment. She had completed significant studies in a particular area of focus, and a project came in and she was given the opportunity. Well, she wasn't given the opportunity. The project came in and her leader had to allocate who would work on that particular project. And he kind of looked around the room and said, okay, you take it, to one of the guys on the team. This guy had no experience, no work experience in that particular project area. He had no qualifications in that particular working area, and no particularly useful insights into making progress in that project area. Whereas Anna did. She had the qualifications, she had the background, and she had the specific insights as well. That would mean that she would do a far better job, far more quickly, was far more qualified, and the appropriate choice. And so Anna's response was, boss, I think I see your sexism peeking through. No, is that your sexism I see peeking through? Oh, nothing like stuffing up a punchline, is there? Sorry about that. In the same way that you might say, I think you got toilet paper on your shoe, calling it out in that offhanded, light-hearted way, but making it known that there is something really inappropriate going on here. This is very inappropriate. As I mentioned earlier, there is no one line that I can give you or that anyone can give you to prescribe how to call out inequality, whether it's sexism, racism, sporting code bias, any of those things. There is no one line that you can use, because in some environments that's more of a norm. In other environments, it's the one-off exception. So hopefully most of us have corporate policies that say that these things are inappropriate and unacceptable. But I think that for the most part, we're kind of there where the corporate policies are in place, but the actual on the ground lived reality, we're not there yet. And for many of us, unless you've lived and breathed as the minority, you won't even know that they exist. So I'd really like you to think about, maybe just take a screenshot of this screen, take a screenshot, take a photo of it. But I would really like you to work through these 4 questions and come up with an answer for yourself. What could speaking up sound like for you? What will speaking up sound like if a friend says something inappropriate? What will speaking up sound like if a colleague says something inappropriate? And what about if a leader says something inappropriate? Maybe that's your boss. Maybe that is someone in a position of power, a position of influence, someone who you wouldn't normally call out on something that you think is not right. How will you call it out? How will you call it out? Will you call it out privately? Will you call it out publicly? What's the line? Where is the line in the sand of when you would call it out publicly and when you would call it out privately? And what will it sound like for you? What will your actions look like when somebody else is making a stand? When someone else is making a stand? Okay. As in, will you support them? How will you support them? Okay, things to avoid. Refuse to let kindness cause silence. We are, I think, generally Aussies are raised, particularly Aussie women, are raised to be kind and polite, and particularly women. So we've got like 95%, probably more actually, women on this call and signed up for this call. We're often raised to be kind, but we're also often raised in an environment where it's not always safe to be different. And that lack of safety can cause an extra barrier when it comes up to speaking about other people who are being slighted. So don't let kindness cause your silence. Don't let the victim feel like a victim. You don't want to embarrass the victim. So be conscious of that. Emotional intelligence, make sure that your reaction matches the situation. And can I tell you that if you don't speak up regularly on this when you see it, so if you're in an environment where this happens a lot and you don't speak up, what you'll find is that you will bottle it and bottle it and bottle it and bottle it. And then somebody will say something and you are going to snap big time over something that seems like a smaller issue. Far better to speak up consistently, and maybe in a lighthearted way, consistently. Work through what it is that you're going to say, work through what the line is. Please feel free to drop me a message, and happy to run it through with you one-on-one and workshop it. Don't minimize. Absolutely don't minimize. So what you don't want to do is write it off and say, I won't say anything. It wasn't really a big deal. Actually, it probably was a very big deal to others. Don't minimize. It may be a way of making you feel better about not speaking up, but actually you're causing a bigger problem by minimizing the situation. And the bottom one there, you may never change a bully. You may never change a bully. The bully may never change. That is no reason to not speak up, because by speaking up, you're going to affect the environment. Either way, speaking up or not, you're going to affect the environment. But by speaking up, you will start the change process by refusing to allow dinosaur behavior to go unspoken. So there were 4 parts that I mentioned to you in that framework. The 5th one is, oh, hang on, another screenshot for you. Here's all of them in the one place, all of them in the one place. So if you want to take a screenshot of this one, I'd love you to take a screenshot, and then you can edit a photo on your screen, edit a photo on your camera. So take a photo of this one and then use one of those little ring things to edit the photo, and just draw some circles around what are the actions that you will take, that you will personally take. What will you look into? What will you do from here? What's the action that you're going to take? Okay, now in the interest of time, I'm going to wrap it up. So number 5 in that framework is a coach. That 30% of people, they look beyond themselves to find answers. They have a coach or a mentor who can see the wood for the trees, see the wood through the trees. Someone who can step outside themselves and see who's not got that same emotional attachment, someone who can see them for their strengths and their abilities and their roadblocks, and help them to navigate so that you can choose that one thing, that one most important thing to chase, without dropping all of the other balls. So the next step, book a strategy call. If you've registered for today, you'll have a message from me with a link to book a strategy call. There's also the link is there if you want to choose that one. So if you want to book a call about coaching, if you want to book a call about your next step, book a strategy call. I've blocked out some time over the next couple of days for a 45-minute session for you to strategize your next move, to get your path set, whether your focus right now is clearer communication, stronger EQ, more courage, or the capacity to implement without burnout. If that's something that's of interest to you, jump onto the button and book a link. But I hope that these strategies for these strategies and suggestions for what to say and when to say it, how to increase your awareness of the inequality outside of your own influence, outside of your own perspective, and then what to say when you do see that inequality. I hope that these have been helpful for you, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Enjoy this. Enjoy your brief lunch hour.